Welcome, my dear students, to another class with me, your tutor, Atsinyo Sekose, and this is from the Directorate of School Education, Nagaland. So today's topic is from the grammar section. You would find it in your main course textbook, and our topic is on tenses. So I hope that did not make you feel tense. Many of us, when it comes to grammar section and especially on tenses, we feel that we know it, but when it comes to writing in the exam, we made a lot of silly mistakes, or for that matter, when we use it in our speech, we made a lot of mistakes. So that is why today's class, we are going to take a look at how to go about with it in your answering your questions, and how to go about with it, using it in our speech. So I hope you would find this useful. Since our topic is break up into 3 sections in our text, we will not be wasting time flipping around the textbook in that manner. So I would suggest that you listen to this lecture and make sure you note down the main key points which I would be repeating. So after you finished reading it, what you can do is use this class as a guide to go about with your exercises. So, like I said, our topic is on tenses, and the first thing that you have to remember or know is that tenses is usually confused with time, because we associate it with an exact point of time. But I tell you, yes, it is also about time, but it is more about the verb here. So, verb. And why verb? Because tenses tells us when an action took place. So that's when you refer to it as time. We are specifically focusing on when the action took place. When did it took place? We can say in the past. You may write down past, or in the present, or in the future. So we have 3 sections there. I need you to draw a line and separate these 3 parts into, again, 3 parts. That is past, present, and future. So these would give us a timeline, all right? We would be referring to this timeline very soon again. So I hope you draw this correct. Make a timeline, draw a straight line, and then divide it into 3 parts. One part is past, second is present, third is future. So using this timeline, when we say an action took place in the past, we mean it happened in the past. And in the present, remember, I need you to write down you, or you can also write me, all right? In the present, you write down you or me. So we are always, remember, we are always in the present. So when we are talking about an action or an event that happened in the past, we are referring to the past tense. When we are referring to an action that is happening at the moment of speaking, that is happening. See, at the moment of speaking, that action is also happening. So that is in the present. And we are always, the speaker, in fact, is always in the present. So you or me. Now, when we are referring to an action that happened, or an action that will happen in the future, that is expected to happen in the future, that means that is in the future tense. So at the moment of speaking, you are referring to something that will happen in the future, so you would use future tense. So that's how we can understand it. Now, we are going to take a look at the different parts of tenses here, and I need you to write down the form, because that way we will be able to cover most of our topic here. So when I say form, I will be giving you the structure of past tense or present tense or future tense. So when you note that down, remember you use it to guide you in your exercises. Now, the next thing that you have to remember before we get into the form is you need to write this down. Continuous. Now, there is no such thing as continuous tense here, but when we say past continuous, what do we mean? That's why we would also be referring to present continuous, future continuous, and so on. So these are some main key things that you need to remember. So under continuous, the verb is always in the form of ing. The verb is always in the form of ing. Why? Because we are talking about an action that is in progress. Whether in the past, in the present, or in the future, we are talking about an action that is in progress. So you would notice that your verb is always in the ing form. Let's take an example here. Talking. Talk is the main verb here. If I add an ing, it becomes in the continuous, it turns into a continuous tense. So these rules applies in all the different parts of tenses. So that's number one. Number two, you need to know what we mean by perfect, because we would also be talking about perfect tenses such as past perfect, present perfect, future perfect, and so on. So when we say perfect, what do we mean? We mean that an action is being perfected or completed or finished. When we want to emphasize on the verb that is being finished, that's when we use perfect tenses. So under perfect tense, you would notice these main verbs, these helping verbs such as has, have, and had. So if I say I had my dinner, or if I say I had my dinner here, had indicates that the action already took place. So that is perfect tense. These helping verbs denotes that it is in the perfect tense. So now we may be confused which one to use, whether it's in the present or in the future. So now again, you need to mark down has and have. We use it for present, in the present tense, has and have. And again, we get confused which one to use. Is it has or is it have? I'm sure in your former classes, you must have learned about the subject-verb agreement, and has is for singular and have is for plural. However, again, there is an exception to the rules. When we use personal pronouns such as I or you, we cannot say I has, so we usually go with I have or you have, and so on. So that is the exception to the rules here. I'll repeat that. Has and have, when you use it, represents perfect tense in the present form. So has is for singular, have is for plural. The exception here is with the personal pronoun I and you. Keep that noted, and we'll move on to had here. This one is the most simplest form. Had here, when we use had, or when we say had, we mean that the action is being perfected. So here it represents perfected, means finished. It represents here past tense. So you may want to write down past tense. Past perfect, in fact, if you want to be precise. So past perfect, it denotes past perfect. Had denotes past perfect. So now we have just discussed continuous, perfect, and we would move on to the next point now. When we say future, you would find, this is for some tips, you would always find in future tenses these helping verbs such as will or shall, depending on the sentence or the subject, will or shall. And remember, when we say perfect, we usually go with have or has. So I will have collected, so that is in the future. So that's how your sentence structure would form. We would be discussing in detail now. For now, you keep in mind that when we say future, you would always notice will or shall. So I hope you have noted that down. Now let's take a look at the first point here, past tense. Let's take a look at past tense. So past tense, remember, we are talking about an action that happened in the past. So we have simple past, or in some case it is also referred to as indefinite. Now, simple past, our structure would be subject plus verb, and verb here would be in the past participle. We will talk about that more. When we say the verb is in the past participle, we usually add it with T or ED or even EN. So here, let's go with the subject you. Let's go with the subject he here. He learned. So if I say he learned, the action happened in the past. Some people prefer to use ED, that is also correct. He learned, or he learned English in the previous class. So if you put it in that way, that means the action had happened in the past. So that is simple past tense. Now, we usually use simple past tense, which means we usually use simple past tense to refer to an action that happened in the past. Remember our timeline, past, present. So you are in the present position and you are referring to an action that happened in the past. So that's what we meant here. And the next point here that you need to write down is, let's say it is past continuous tense. So remember, when we say continuous, our verb is in the ing form. Past continuous tense here. Let's take the example of he again. He was or were. Remember, our subject and verb should agree, so we would be going with was. He was where? Since it is continuous, learning. So in this case here, we have he as the subject, we have was or were, so you can write that as in your form. Subject plus was or were plus verb. Remember, it's in the continuous tense here, so you need an ing. So your verb should be in the form of ing. So this would give us the form or the structure of the past continuous tense. I'll repeat it. Past continuous tense here would have the form or structure of subject plus was or were plus verb in the ing form. Now, why was or were? Because depending on the subject, you would need to choose whether it is plural or singular. Supposing our subject is they, you would have choose they were learning and so on. So that's how it should go about. That's our past continuous tense. Now let's add that perfect tense in our past continuous tense. So the next topic, the next point here is past perfect continuous tense. Past perfect continuous tense. So our verb should be in the past, we know that. Now when we say perfect, we need a had here, the perfect helping verb here. Then continuous, which means we need an ing in our verb. So let's again go with another example here. So she, let's take the example of she. So that's our subject. Perfect, she had. Then in this case, we need the be verb in the past participle. Remember en. So she had been learning grammar, or whatever the case may be there. So we have subject plus had. Since it is in the past perfect, we need this had. She had, be is the main verb, all right? When we add en, it becomes the past participle. Then we need the main verb here. Main verb here is learn. So verb plus ing. So when we use this, put it in this way, we are referring to an action that was being perfected in the past. All right? No need to get confused. When I will say, when we see the past tense and then when we see the verb in the ing form, we get really confused, thinking that it is in the present. But the main point here is we are referring to an action that was being perfected in the past. And we usually use this tense in connection with another action that was happening. Now, take a look at your timeline again. So in your timeline, you have the past, present, and your future. So you are in the present. Remember, we are always in the present. So she had been learning grammar when I entered. So you are referring to an action that happened somewhere at a point of time in the past and continuing into, nearly continuing, just about reaching present here. Okay, so two actions that was happening simultaneously. She had been learning grammar when I entered the room, whatever the case may be. So in such cases, we use past perfect continuous tense. So I'm going to repeat the structure again for past perfect continuous tense. We have subject plus had plus been, that is be verb in the past participle. Then we have verb in the ing form. I hope that is clear with you. Now we would move on to the present tense. So present tense, we would start in the same way, simple present or indefinite present, whichever you prefer. So simple present here, we use simple present in this structure. That is, we have subject plus verb s, you can put it in the bracket, so that would give us the simple present. Let's say she likes. And since, remember, our subject here is third person singular, we need the s here. So that's why in some case you may need it, some case you may not. So she likes, let's say, ice cream. So in this case, this is the simple present, and we use simple present when we are referring to a specific thing or a habitual thing, all right, or a universal thing. So yesterday she likes ice cream, tomorrow also maybe her favorite food or her favorite thing to have is ice cream. So that's why we use simple present in this manner. Remember our timeline, we are always in the present, and this is something that she would like, all right, always. So in that case we use simple present. I'll give you another example here. Supposing the sun rises in the east. So that is universal. So such kind of universal thing also is always in the simple present. Another example here is water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Now this is a well-known fact, universal thing and a well-known fact. Yesterday, if you boiled water, yesterday also it would have boiled at 100 degree. Tomorrow, if you try that, it will still boil at 100 degree. So when you are referring to a factual thing, a thing that is known to be true, we use simple present. Let's take a look at this structure here. Water here is our subject, and verb here is boil. So we have verb in the S form. So this gives us the simple present structure. So now you may write down subject plus verb plus s. When do we use simple present tense? We use simple present tense when we are referring to a habitual thing, all right, an action that always happens. Then we use it to refer it to or to state universal factual thing. So that's what you can write down in your notebook. So that is our simple present tense. Now we would move on to present continuous tense. So present continuous tense, remember our verb is always in the ing form if it is continuous. So let's try an example here. Since it is continuous, our verb should be also in the present form. So he is or are, provided the subject is plural. He is or are doing. So our verb here is do. We need ing to make it continuous. So he is doing his homework, let's say. So in this case here, what structure do we have here? I'm going to repeat the example. He is or are doing his homework. We would be definitely going with is here. So subject here is he. Then in our structure of a present continuous tense, you would be needing these helping verbs is or are plus verb in the ing form. So that would give us present continuous tense. And when do we use this? When we are referring to an action, when you at the moment of speaking, an action that is continuing, that is in progress. Remember our timeline, you are in the present, the action is happening here in the present. So that is present continuous tense. Now, let's try to add present perfect continuous tense here. How would our sentence be? So present, to save time, I would just use P here, present perfect continuous tense. So now let's try the same example. Using the same example, he, since it is perfect and since this is continuous, we need either has or have. So let's say he has, again we need this be verb in the past participle. He has been doing his homework. So if we look at this sentence here, he is the subject, has denotes that it is in the past, has suggests that it is in the perfect tense. So she, subject plus has, be verb here, has been, or in some case you would also have this perfect. Then verb plus verb in the ing form, and that would give us, this is the structure, this would give us present perfect continuous tense. How do we know it is perfect? Because we have this has. How do we know that it is continuous? Because our verb is in the ing form. So when do we use present perfect continuous tense? Remember, it's the same case with past, all right? In the case when we have perfect, we are specifically referring to the action being perfected, all right? So we are referring to an action that was happening, that was in the progress or process of completing or completed. So I'm going to repeat the structure again. Present perfect continuous tense, subject plus has or have plus be or been, you can put it in that way, plus verb plus ing. That would give us present perfect continuous tense. Now you may be wondering where this is leading, but stick around, we will figure out more in the after we finish the future tense. So now the third part, that is future tense. So simple future, or you can say simple indefinite future tense. In this case, remember, in the earlier part of our class, we learned that we would be needing a helping verb that is will or shall. And if you see that, it means it is in the future tense, all right? So now, he will, let's say, do his homework. Let's take a look at this. He is the subject, will denotes that it is in the future tense. Do is our verb here, and our verb does not have any additional letters added to it. So this is the base verb. So verb in the base form, all right? Verb in the base form. These would give us the simple future tense. He, subject, will, that denotes that it is in the future tense, and simple future tense always have verb in the base form. So he will do. That means an action that would happen in the future. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to repeat again. Future tense structure is subject plus will. In some case, you may also need shall. So you may put an oblique after will and subject plus will or shall. For instance, I shall do my homework. So that denotes that it is going to happen in the future. So plus verb in the best form. The verb is always in the best form. Remember, when you see this, do not get confused thinking that it is in the present, all right? Because this verb is helping us understand that it is in the future, that it will happen in the future. So that's about simple future tense. The next one that we will be learning is future continuous tense. So again, we learned that in future we need will or shall, and in continuous our verb is in the ing form. So that already gives us the structure here. It would be subject. It would be subject plus will or shall, and since our tense is in the continuous, we would also be needing a verb in the ing form. So that much we know. Let's try to put it into a sentence here. So in this case, let's go with he will. Let's go with homework again. He will, we need a continuous verb here. He will, so we need a be verb here. He will be doing a helping verb. Be is a helping verb, all right? So he will be doing his homework. So our structure would be subject plus will or shall plus be plus verb in the ing form. Now, that would give us future continuous tense. Subject plus will or shall plus be plus verb. So in this case, we have the additional word be, helping verb be here. Now the next one, we would move on to future perfect continuous tense. So future perfect continuous tense. Remember, if it is perfect, we need has or have. And since it is future, we cannot use had. So that is, we can leave that out. So future perfect continuous tense. Let's go with an example here. He will. Now remember, it is in the perfect tense, so we need a have or has. He will have been. Hold on. He would have been doing his homework. He subject plus will or shall, remember? So will or shall plus have, or you can just simply put it have been here, plus verb in the ing form. So that gives us the structure of a future perfect continuous tense. And if it is perfect, we are referring here to an action that would be completed in the future. So that gives us the structure of a future perfect continuous tense. So here, he will have been doing his homework, that is in the future perfect continuous tense. Why? Because we are referring to an action in the future which would have been perfected. So that gives us future perfect continuous tense. Now, very quickly, let's take a look at our timeline again. The timeline is very important, so you need to refer to your timeline. Why? Because the form and structure which I have just given may help you write well in your exam or work in your exercises. But the point of learning grammar is also to be able to use it in our conversation, in our speech. So we need to remember that you need to also think about the timeline, all right? When we say timeline here, we mean, you know, literally you cannot go and structure someone's conversation. Oh, there is he, there is will, that means it is in the future. Or there is that has or have, that means in the perfect tense. You cannot literally comprehend everything in that way when you are talking to someone. So here, using this timeline will do the trick. So remember, you are always in the present. You are always in the present. And when you are referring to an action happened in the past, you use past tense. When you are referring specifically to an action that would have been perfected in the that was perfected. When you refer to an action that was perfected in the past, you use past perfect. When you refer to an action that was happening in the past, past continuous, and so on. The same thing applies with present and future. Present here is at the moment of speaking. Now, there is some exception to the rules with future tense here. For instance, you do not always use this form or structure in your conversation. I can also say, I am going to church. So, without using will or shall, remember, without using will or shall, I can also say this in the future sense. I'm going to, or I will go to, that is also the same thing here, the same case. So these are some exceptions to the rules which we have just discussed, and I hope you find this structure useful when you write your exercises. And remember, we need to use it in our conversation, so use this timeline. Remember, you are always in the present. When you refer to something in the past or future, that is when you use the different tenses. And on that note, we would wind up today's class. Thank you all very much for joining me.